Wow. Just wow. Another one of those terrible episodes of Mr. Krabs being nothing but a huge crook. Even to his own grandfather. Let's get this intro started, shall we, folks? Hello guys, my name's Jonathan's Media Shack here again, and today, here's my review / rant on another terrible SpongeBob episode from season 6 called Grandpappy the Pirate. Yep, from season 6. So basically what the plot is, outside the Krusty Krab, Mr. Krabs receives a letter in the mail from his grandfather. Mr. Krabs then freaks out about it because he's visiting him, and he is a pirate unlike Mr. Krabs, who he thinks he's a pirate instead of owning the Krusty Krab. So, what does Mr. Krabs do? He tells SpongeBob that he was a pirate too, just like his granddad, Grandpa Redbeard. But then he quit his job because the crew took all the money and then fired the crew. And to make his grandfather proud, Mr. Krabs gets himself Squidward, Patrick, and SpongeBob, and they disguise themselves as pirates to rebuild the Krusty Krab into a huge pirate ship, and tries to do everything to convince him that they are trained pirates as well. Ironically, Grandpappy arrives and sees the ship and reveals that he was beginning to think Mr. Krabs was lying to his old granddad. Of course Mr. Krabs is lying because he's a crook. What can I expect? That's all I have to say. Mr. Krabs acted like a crook because he pretended so that he can try to convince his own grandfather. Why couldn't he just tell the real truth instead, rather than to tell a lie to him? And Grandpappy then soon orders Mr. Krabs to show him what his ship can do. Mr. Krabs pretends to sail the ship, and Squidward makes it look looking like that waves are coming up, and Patrick blows the water up in the air for effect. Mr. Krabs then has to make a comment twice to get SpongeBob to do his part, and his job was to play records secretly. It was to make it sound like the wind. Yep, that was SpongeBob's job of doing that. Grandpappy is still like bewildered or fooled about it. Grandpappy sees someone ahead and soon gets his crew to go to their stations for battle. Mr. Krabs is then all worked up that he is the real deal. But then Mr. Krabs reveals that it was just his daughter, Pearl, being a complete and total bitch. Yeah, Pearl just acted like a bitch and yelling at her dad like 4 times, or 5, I guess. And yeah, it was just Pearl being like a total bitch throughout the whole time it was his daughter. And Grandpappy, thinking that it was a sea witch, claims that he's going to make her. Yeah, he claims that he's going to make her meet her maker. To meet her maker, I meant. I'm sorry if I messed up, guys. But before he can kill her, Mr. Krabs just stops him right on time, saying, "No, please!" And then it goes out, the lid. And he's like, "What the hell are you doing? I was about to kill that sea witch." Yeah. And then it gets worse. Paul bangs on it, like obnoxiously banging it, and then wooing her dad, wooing for her dad, I guess. And Grandpappy's like, "Now you made it more bitchier than ever." Yeah. And then Mr. Krabs then decides to silence Poe. And he's like, "Poe, will you shut up? Your grandfather's in here." Yeah. And then Mr. Krabs tells Poe to, he actually tells Poe to fuck off because of her her grandfather, because of his grandfather being here. Sorry about that. And then Poe's like, "What's with the shitty outfit that you have?" And then he's like, "Please just shut up and go home." Yeah. Mr. Krabs lets Grandpappy know that he has already taken care of it, and Grandpappy sees through Mr. Krabs' um malicious game, I should say, and he becomes like furious and enraged that the record on his nose literally explodes. Mr. Krabs tries to reason with him, but Grandpappy makes Mr. Krabs say that the code is to never tell a lie. So Mr. Krabs confesses everything, saying that a pirate never lies. But unlike him, Mr. Krabs was a dirty liar through the whole time. Yeah, Mr. Krabs had been a liar the whole entire time. Mr. Krabs breaks everything that was a lie. Like, and even ripped up the crew's clothing. And yeah, in a kids show, then SpongeBob and Patrick and Squidward had to had to had to be naked with no clothes whatsoever. In a kids show, really? Yeah, and then he wrecks everything that was a whole lie. And the only thing left is the Krusty Krab and his true belongings. Mr. Krabs reveals to Grandpappy that he was the boss of a restaurant. But unfortunately, surprisingly to Mr. Krabs, Grandpappy was actually impressed for his effort of Mr. Krabs' restaurant, saying that his prices of things and scamming people out of money legally is a true piracy. Soon, Grandpappy borrows some of Mr. Krabs' money, and Grandpappy leaves on a lifeboat, laughing maniacally like a pirate would do. And normally, and Mr. Krabs is very selfish and he will whine about it, but instead Mr. Krabs chuckles that he himself knew he got his talent from his grandfather, and that's basically it. That's basically what the whole entire plot for this episode is. I'll explain my thoughts about it, so stay tuned.